Hi folks, welcome back to the show, We the People. I'm Dave Gallus, your host. I'm running for New Mexico State Senate District 37, and we have another special guest. She's back again. This is Isabella Solis, and she's running for New Mexico State Representative District 37 in my Senate district as well. So today's subject is going to be about, do you feel safe in New Mexico? Now there's a lot going on. We've seen cities, even local cities, Albuquerque, they were rioting in Albuquerque, it's not that far away. And if we don't have the legislature that puts the right people in office, or having the right people in office through voting, then we're not going to get the right people that are going to protect us from rioting, lawlessness, anarchy. So, Isabella, I don't know how you feel about safety, but there's a lot of things that need to be protected. So what do you think are pretty big subjects that we need to protect?
Thank you, Dave, for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. This is really exciting times. I mean, I'm still optimistic, even though they want to defund the police.
Oh.
And that really burdens me that we are, even having that conversation, because how are we going to be safe in our homes if we defund the police? So that's really important. And yes, those protesters that are destroying properties, I think that that's wrong. I don't know if that is just a lack of education. Does it go back to education? And how are we creating fear in our own state? Causing people to fear the pandemic instead of standing strong, having a backbone, and saying we can face this head on, and we don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be a state that is afraid.
Right, I hear you. And really, I think the protest over George Floyd's death is certainly warranted. I understand that. I can feel that pain. But peaceful protesting is one thing, but it changed. It's not peaceful protesting. It's actually Black Lives Matter, and Antifa has taken over.
Yes.
And Antifa and Black Lives Matter are not grassroots people. These are well-funded from outside. I believe it's George Soros and other big money people that are actually funding this. And if you look on TV and you see these people that are dressed up, they look like they're in military outfits. Now this isn't grassroots. So these people are destroying cities. Minneapolis was taken over. They burned the police station. They turned over police cars. There were policemen shot and killed. There were many people that were killed. And it all was around this man's death. Now, I wonder what Martin Luther King would say about this. He would be talking peace, not division, not tearing cities apart. But there's an evil out there. And I don't feel safe.
Well, Dave, I would just really have to say that, Dr. Martin Luther King died and was shot and killed because he was standing up for what was right.
Yes.
And quite the opposite of what is happening today. Right. That's what he was standing up for what was right for our community, our states, our America. And people don't want what's right. Apparently they want what's bad, because it just seems to me like if it's bad, then you have some leadership that can come in and say, okay, so now we can fix all that. Oh. So we have the solutions. So that's why we need to have good leadership in Santa Fe, even at the local level, to be able to lead our state in a good, healthy direction and not put fear in our communities.
Sure. I mean, if you have the right legislatures, you'll feel confident that your voice will be heard. You will be safe in your homes. You'll be safe in your communities. I mean, I just heard about a little 8-year-old girl I think was shot and killed that was out playing. It's like, this is anarchy. This is craziness. And they want to defund the police. I mean, who wants to defund the police? To me, I see the Democratic-controlled cities that want to defund the police. And please, my Democratic friends, do you really feel safe following the Democratic Party as it is now? The Democratic Party was a reasonable party at one time, but it's been taken over by the aggressive, I would say regressive, socialist wing of the Democratic Party. So I think folks have to really think about what you're doing here. And it is scary, so I do not feel safe with our legislature as it is.
Well, Dave, I'd have to agree with you. I think that there's something wrong there, and we need to fix it. I think what we need is to be able to bring respect back, not only in our communities, but with one another, but at our state as a whole. What does that respect mean to you, Dave?
Wow. Respect means that I'm listened to. Respect means that my opinion does mean something. Now, I might not be right, but when we're sworn in, we're going to have to swear an allegiance to the U.S. Constitution and to the New Mexico State Constitution. If a constituent comes to me and says, well, I want you to do this, and it's against the Constitution, I have to explain that I can't do that.
Right.
We do have a process, and respect would be, we have to respect the laws. If we all respect the laws, and the laws were enforced, we wouldn't have an anarchy. We would have to just go, excuse me, we would have to go back to what you were talking about, the riots and all that, and all those monuments that have been coming down. Right.
That's really discouraging. It really broke my heart. And I can understand that maybe even right here in our backyard with Oñate High School,
right,
wanting to change the name from Oñate to something else. I know that the Las Cruces public school system has on their website a survey to take. Do you want to change the name? What do you want to change it? But it seems like when I took the survey that they had already decided what they wanted to call it.
Sure.
So it was. I just really kind of felt like I was cheated out of.
You were disrespected.
I just didn't feel like there was enough respect. But at the same time, there are kids that graduated from there, and that's their alma mater.
Yeah.
They are knights. That's special. Like I said before, as a Democrat, you connect, you belong to a party, you belong to something.
Sure.
It's the same thing. That's my school. Do they want those changes? And I just think that we need to respect people. I understand that people do bad things, and I would have to go back to that monument that Herb Penny was speaking about in an edition that he did in
this was in Germany, in Auschwitz.
Okay.
And those people, the Jewish community, did not want that death camp torn down because they wanted to remember and never do that again, never allow that to happen again. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that is a real way to know what history is. Don't try to discard your history. Understand what the history is, so we'll never repeat such mistakes again. And, they talk about grassroots. Frederick Douglass, who was the first black Supreme Court justice, I believe, he was a man that spoke out about justice and righteousness. They tore his statue down, a black man. So, I mean, are they idiots, or are they just so angry and evil that they don't care? They're just out of control.
Well, to me, that's just such disrespect for our history. And that just kind of takes me back to the fact that, and this kind of ties in with our education system, because if we're not teaching our kids, and maybe we haven't in a very long time, we're not teaching them the history, how important it is, how important it was to Grandpa, and to others, If we're not teaching that, that's why we have what we have today.
Sure.
And as I was watching on television how they're destroying all these monuments, all I saw was a bunch of young people out there. And it just seemed like there was a lawlessness that was taking place, that's kind of the way the wrong is made right, and we have just kind of forgotten about respect, and that there is respecting our officers, respecting the law. We don't have any of that anymore. And I don't know that they've created any kind of history, They haven't lived long enough to know what history looks like, and they're destroying something they have no clue. And I was a little disappointed in that I would see that happening.
When I moved out here about 8 years ago, I wanted to start learning about the U.S. Constitution. So I took a course at New Mexico State University. And incidentally, folks, if you're 65 or over, and I'm well over 65, you can take a course at New Mexico State for $5 a credit hour. I would have paid $1,500 for a course when it only cost me $15 a course.
Oh, wow.
So, but I will say this, that the professor that was teaching swore that he was not biased. But, oh my gosh, you talk about left-wing liberal, no offense, folks, but he was not teaching American history. He was talking about slavery and oppression. And I said, Professor, I never owned a slave. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather never owned a slave. And you want reparations for somebody that never owned a slave, and you want to give it to somebody that never was a slave. Now that doesn't even make sense. And I think most black people say, this is ridiculous. But you'll find that you have a lot of white people that feel that they have to defend the black oppression. Wow, doesn't make sense. This is what's being taught in our schools. So they're not respecting our students. They're not allowing our students to think freely. They're teaching them what to think, not how to think.
And that's right. I think that you're right on that, Dave. And the lack of respect in our school system. And I think that we no longer listen to different sides. we only listen to what we think and we go with it. I think that it's important that we listen to all the community, whether you're red, white, blue, green, whatever color you may be. It is important that we listen to the people to be able to know what people are thinking and respect their ideology. So many times we just because you think that way, well, you're not that important. Well, we all have different ideas and perspectives. That's why we have this great opportunity in this country to be able to serve, to be able to run as elected officials, to be able to have businesses in our community. These are the opportunities that we have. So we need to realize that we need to respect one another. But the biggest thing that's missing is trust. We no longer trust our government.
Well, I don't think they're deserving of trust. And I knock on some doors and talk to people. They like to slam the door in my face. I don't trust politics. Well, I don't either, but that's why we're out here running for office. We do want to listen. And, you know, government was created just to protect the rights that God gave us. It's just, you know, it's only a matter of following the rules. If we all follow the rules, we won't have a problem. But you also have to have law enforcement, you have to have legislators, and everybody has to agree, and everybody has to be on the same page. So if like I said before, if a person comes to me, one of my constituents, and says, I want this done, I have my opinions about things, and I'll say, well, this is how I feel. And we'll go back and forth. But basically, when it comes down to it, if it's not a violation of the federal constitution or the state constitution, I have to represent my constituents, which whatever they want.
Yes, absolutely.
And if morally I can't follow that, I have to leave as a legislator.
Well, I mean, I would have to say that there's such disrespect for the rule of law today. And I can understand that there's no trust either. Everywhere. There's no trust anywhere, really. But I think that it's important that as elected officials, right now, there's so much lawlessness going on. And so we're going to Santa Fe. We want to go to Santa Fe to create more law over all this lawlessness. So sometimes I'm thinking about it, it's like, this is why I'm running, because I want some new laws for our state that are healthy and strong and it'll just move us forward. And then I'm thinking, but we got so much lawlessness and we're creating more law on top of law. I think that sometimes we need to stop and clean all of that out and go back to just basic things. And you mentioned it a while ago, our Constitution, you know, we have a guide, but we're not following it.
No, we're not. I mean, you have the Supreme Court making laws. That's not their job. They're supposed to rule on the Constitution. We have Congress that has given their power over to the bureaucracy, the shadow government. You have the IRS. They're making laws. That's not their job. They work for the president and the executive branch. But Congress is supposed to be doing their job. Congress is supposed to be protecting us from lawlessness when it comes to legislation. We have Judicial Watch is doing the job that our Congress should be doing, watching over us, protecting us, respecting us, and they're not doing it. We have to hold our elected officials accountable. And people talk about, oh, let's have term limits. Like you say, adding another law, which would be the Convention of States. If we just follow the Constitution, 80% of our problems would be gone if we just followed it the way it's written.
But I think that the biggest problem in this trust factor in all of this is that what I am feeling and the way when I talk to people is, I don't know that they want the solutions.
No, they don't.
It just feels like there is a solution, and I want to be part of the solution. But I don't think people want solutions, and I'm not sure why they don't want solutions.
Hold that thought.
Okay.
We're coming back after the break with solutions.
Okay.
See you in a couple minutes, folks.
Horizon Granite is here. We'll come to you to customize your kitchen and bathroom with beautiful countertops and cabinets. Find out more at horizongranite.com. Call us at 575-650-3180.
Horizon Granite is here.
It's here.
Make yourself a beautiful home.
Hi, I'm Ray Bamberg with Here on Earth. I would like to invite you for a free hearing evaluation to our office. We've been here in southern New Mexico for 34 years helping people hear better.
churches and freed countries. They've raised our flag and our hope. They've been called leathernecks. They've been called devil dogs. But above all, they're called Marines.
Hi folks, welcome back to We the People. I'm Dave Gallus, your host. I'm running for New Mexico State Senate District 37, and our guest host, co-host, is Isabella Solis, and she's running for New Mexico State Representative District 37. So Isabella, welcome back. We were talking about how the legislature doesn't want to listen to us. So, and I find that all the time. I found it in city council. I'd yell at them. And we'd have a whole mob of people in city council saying, we want this. They'd vote the opposite.
Yes.
County commission, you were the only one that voted the way we wanted to. I asked for a raise of hands on a certain issue. All the hands went up. They voted the opposite way. Santa Fe is the same thing. Mm-hmm. So they're not respecting us. And I certainly don't feel safe within my community when it comes to knowing that my government is working for me. So I'm sure you got a lot of thoughts about this. So what are you going to do when you get into Santa Fe to change that situation to where we will trust you?
You know, Dave, I just have to be the same person. I continue to be the same person that people trust me. If I have an issue, they need to know it. I just need to be transparent. And sometimes it's hard to be transparent and really accountable. And as a county commissioner, I really have learned so many things about our policies and the way things work and how are things going to work in Santa Fe. Well, we need somebody that can understand the policy locally to be able to make better policies or laws at the state level as well. And because it is kind of like a domino effect. What happens over here is going to affect our county.
Sure.
So it's important that we protect our county and our constituents.
Sure. I remember I went through quite a few of the county commission meetings, and you were always trying to get the roads squared away. And I live on an arroyo, you could call it. It's not much of a road, but we were way outside. So I really appreciated the way you listened when it came time to really listen to the folks and hear what they wanted to say. That does not seem to be consistent with the legislators that I've seen and worked with. So
I love what I do as a county commissioner, working with the community. I mean, the one thing that they asked for roads and infrastructure, you know, when they had flooding issues. But I love what I do, and I think that I can do it in a bigger way in Santa Fe. There's so much more. I mean, people think that it's easy, that you're going to be a legislator, but in order to get a bill going, you're going to have to think about the money that you're going to need for that particular bill. So it's not just, oh, I'm going to go do this, this, and this, and this. I mean, I have a list of ideas, but I'm not willing to share just now. But there is going to be money attached to every bill that you want to implement.
yeah, we were talking about safety too, and a big issue that I have is pregnancy, abortion, pro-life. I'm always going to come down on the side of life. But I also, you know, there's a safety factor for the mother, for the child, and I can't imagine what kind of pressure a woman must feel when she feels that that's her only option. Yeah. And I really feel for her, but I don't know that they're getting the full, well-rounded information on what the repercussions can be. I know a lady that's 65 years old and she has never gotten over abortion she had when she was a teenager. And you know, the men have to be involved as well. I mean, young men have no idea of what the gift of a child is. Now, you have to be responsible, and I don't see that happening. But when things happen, and we have facilities within Las Cruces, we have CareNet, we have Showers of Grace, we have Turning Point. I was at Turning Point, and they not only have isolated rooms for counseling, they have a counseling room for fathers-to-be. To really have the young men step up and say, yes, this is my responsibility. And so... Well,
Dave, you know, I really just kind of would like to interject a little something there. I think that abortion is a big topic, you know, and it has been for many years. But I would like to focus on how can we educate these young women. What is it that we need to do to educate them? They're already under a lot of pressure. They're dealing with fear. I mean, you know, maybe fear of their parents, fear of their boyfriends, whatever those fears may be. So how can we educate them and let them know that there are other options?
Sure. Well, you know, it's funny. I'll tell a story. And it's funny, I came out here from Philadelphia to try my hand at college back in 1969. And I met a girl out here. Her name was Linda, real nice girl. And we were in my aunt's car, and we were parking. And we were heavy kissing, heavy petting. The insides of the Chevrolet were all steamed up, and we were hot and heavy, and it was getting out of hand. And I remember she pushed me back, and I'm like, I could just about breathe. And she was flush, her face was all pink and red, and she pushed me back and she looked directly in my eyes and she said, "Do you love me?" And I went, I'm glad I was honest. And I said, "No, I don't." That was the end of it. And of course, a couple days after that, I'm kicking myself, but I am so glad that she made that call and I was honest about it.
Yeah.
And actually, I respect Linda so much, and someday I'm going to run into her again and just see what her take was on that whole operation. And we haven't been in touch since then, and I came back to Philadelphia, became a policeman. But it's one of the few times I was very happy with my decision. But the girl has the decision. And I mean, rape is a different story, and incest is a different story, a forcible. But the girl has the decision. And I can only feel bad when a young couple are in the wrong relationship when the right person comes along. It's like you missed that opportunity. So to me, that's about respect too, and it's about respecting each other and respecting yourself.
Absolutely.
And we had the movie Unplanned that was shown. We bought out a couple theaters in town. Russell Allen let us put it on, you know, and it was great. But I found out that a 15-year-old girl can have an abortion without her parents' consent, without the parents knowing anything, yet she couldn't see that movie unless she had a guardian with her. It's like, is that ridiculous or what?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, so I feel for the women, and I want to support women, but I want to let them know that there are other options.
Yes.
And you have a prescription bottle, even over the counter, a medication. It has a whole chart saying what the downside is, what the repercussions are physically. Now, emotionally, like I said, an old woman never got over that. So.
Well, Dave, I would have to really, speak into that, because I met a lady that did have an abortion, and years later, she's still talking about it.
Yeah.
So there's a healing process that needs to take place. And so many women don't heal, and so they go into drugs and alcohol because they feel so guilty about what they've done, and they blame themselves. And a lot of times I wonder, I said to myself, but what about the men? What about their responsibility?
Right.
What happens there? I mean, how can we create a law to make them responsible too?
Well,
I mean, that's just a thought.
No, Mark Cavalier does the Coalition for Life in El Paso, and I've been connected with him. We had the plaza where we had the pro-life rally there. And Mark said, it's got to be, it's not legislation that's going to change it. It's got to be public opinion. People have to be educated, our key word, educated on what the repercussions are. Planned Parenthood is a business. And the theory is that Planned Parenthood will actually institute contraception into schools, high schools, knowing that a young girl will have an average of 3 pregnancies before she graduates. So they are actually creating their own finances in the business. And baby body parts are sold off. I mean, it's just crazy. And I don't think people are aware, again, education as to what's going on. And I certainly wouldn't judge any woman for having to make the decision if she has all the information.
Dave, when I was growing up, my mother always talked to me about not having sex, until I was married.
Right.
And so that was always like, sex? Oh my God, what, it was a big word,
Right.
3 letters, but it was a big word. So she always advised us, and always said, you don't have sex until you get married. And so I think that a lot of times parents need to educate their children.
Yeah.
And we're not getting that anymore. That's way back when.
Yeah, you feel like an old fogey, right?
Yeah.
But if you have a pregnancy, I'll bet you some young women that do get pregnant never talk to their parents, but come to find out later on, after they've had the abortion, that parents would say, "Why did you do that?
Yes.
We would help you with this." It's like there's opportunities that they're not even aware of. It's inconvenience. Back in biblical times, they had this idol called Baal, and it was a bronze statue with arms outstretched, and it was all bronze. And the babies that they were trying to, I don't know what the purpose was, but they would sacrifice their infants to that Baal god, and they would have a fire underneath of this idol that would be cherry red, and they would place their babies on that. That's where the word cannibal came from, because Khan means priest, and Baal is the god that they sacrificed their babies to. And to me, it seems like nowadays we're sacrificing our babies to the god of convenience. I was 40 years old when I found out I was going to be a father again, and I wasn't in a marriage, just barely in a relationship, and it's like, oh my gosh, can I do this again? And I'm so glad I never considered it. I had a friend that said, get rid of it. And it's like, what? Get rid of it? No, I can't do that. And Jason's been a blessing.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, I just hope that people realize that there are other options, and there are people in our community, like I said, Turning Point, CareNet, Showers of Grace. These are all agencies that want to help young mothers and fathers.
And I think that just educating our young people, just educating them, you know, and letting them know that there are people that really do care about them.
Sure. And there are alternatives.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just when you meet somebody really special, you don't want to be in a position where you can't connect. Right. And you know, if you get complications going on there. So we're talking about all this respect, and we talked about, what we didn't talk about is the Constitution. And the first part of the Constitution talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Or is that the, that's the Constitution. No, that's the, the Constitution. So that, to me, is the ultimate respect. It's, we respect life. We talked about pro-life. We talked about liberty. Our liberties to follow the laws that have been laid down, which we all follow the same laws. And the pursuit of happiness. Who doesn't want to be happy?
That's right.
You can be happy if, like my platforms, education, jobs, family, and security. You start off with education, so then you can get a good job, then you can support a family, and what was the last one? Security. You'll need the police.
That's right. You know what? I am thankful for our country because we have freedom of speech.
Yes.
And we can still, we have these opportunities, and we want to make sure that we keep these opportunities for our next generation. So that's why it's so important, Dave, that good people run for office to be able to change the policies and the laws that are in this land right now.
Absolutely. Well, folks, we're running. Isabella Solis, New Mexico State Representative, District 37. Dave Gallus, State Senator, District 37. Vote for us, and you'll see changes happen. We'll see you next week.